we also have the certificate programs for people who want to come and have a short-term certificate and get a degree. But it's important that we get this message out. We want people to realize that these students, when they graduate from high school, they want to go away to a university. They still can. It's not either or, it's us and. So I'd like you to help us to share that message with people when you go out into the community. We are your community college. Thank you and enjoy your day.
Thank you, Dr. Winfrey. Next on this month's board is my friend, my state rep, the best state rep in Springfield. State Rep Anthony DeLuca.
Hi folks, good morning. My neighbor, who is a very religious family, his son is now of driver's age, so he has his driver's license now. And he said to his dad, Dad, you know, I'd like you to consider giving me a car. Dad said, well, you know, there's three things I'd like you to do. One, I'd like you to study the Bible an hour a day. I know you've been doing that, but I want you to continue with your Bible reading and studying 1 hour every day. I want you to, on your schoolwork, focus on it, no less than A's and B's on your report card. And third, I want you to get a haircut. So the son said, okay, Dad. So a few months pass, and the son comes back to his dad, and he shows him his report card. And he says, look, Dad, all A's and 1 B. It's very good, son. I'm proud of you. And Dad, you know that I've been reading my Bible and studying my Bible for no less than an hour every day. Yes, you have, son. I'm proud of you. So what do you think? Can we get that vehicle? He said, well, son, I'm proud of you. You're doing a great job, but you didn't get that haircut. You didn't get your haircut. And that was one of the three things. And he said, well, Dad, you know, on my studies and my work, reading the Bible and all, I came to the realization that Jesus had long hair. And I figured if Jesus could have long hair, then I could have long hair. He said, son, that's true. That's a good point. But also remember something. Jesus walked everywhere he went. So just to lighten things up a little bit before we start today. Welcome to Chicago Heights, my hometown. I was mayor of Chicago Heights. This is where I live. This is where our family had our business. And we're a proud people here in Chicago Heights. We love our town. So I saw that the forum runs from 10 to 12. Is that the schedule, 10 to 12? And 12 is around lunchtime. So in true Chicago Heights fashion, what we would typically do, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, is we would probably call over to Lorenzetti's and we'd order up a little seafood salad and maybe some manigot, and why don't we ship it all over here so everyone can have lunch, and we'll send the bill to J.B. Pritzker. Because that's I think it's a great plan. We'll see what he says when he comes on. But this is an important election, as all of you know. I think it's great that we're having this forum here in Chicago Heights. I think it's great, and I hope they continue throughout the state. But pay attention, see what their answers are. Just remember, come January of 19, when the new governor takes office, assuming we have a new governor, when the new governor takes office, the problems that we are facing in Illinois are still going to be there. They're still going to be there, and there's some big issues. So don't be afraid to ask these folks where they stand on these issues and what their solutions are to them, because they're monumental. So thank you, folks, and enjoy your day.
So before I ran for public office, I was a librarian. So anyone that can tell stories like Anthony is a friend of mine. Do we have any elected officials in the room? Let's see. Major Reed Laws. Jim Rowe. Mark Wiley, he's one of the trustees. They announced him earlier. Chris Bukakis. Curtis Strazak. Anthony DeLuca just left. Java Rogers, Senator Mike Hastings. Fellow veteran, Justice Cynthia Cobb. Any candidates running for public office? Cherie Henry, Bob Baylor, Ravonda Doss Bell, Aminia Power, Ashanta Rice Akiwowo, Diane C. Pearson, Corinne Davis. And I believe it's William Laws. William H. Laws. Is the moderator? Miriam Slater, trustee. Hi, Miriam. I turned around and saw you sitting there. Oh, and the newest elected trustee of the Village of Olympia Fields, my friend Cassandra Metz. So I think we're about ready for the forum to start. Craig Dellimore, he's going to be our moderator for today. He's the political editor for WBBM News Radio in Chicago. He joined the station in 1983 after working for several years with the Associated Press Radio Network in Washington, D.C. Before that, he worked as a writer for WCBS News Radio in New York. During his time at WBBM, Craig has performed a variety of jobs, including anchor, managing editor, legislative correspondent, and suburban bureau chief. Craig has covered a number of national political conventions for WBBM and the 2008 campaign that resulted in the election of our former president, Barack Obama, was probably one of the most exciting political seasons for us all. He says he likes to get behind the traditional headlines and sound bites to illustrate why some political events are transpiring the way they have. Everyone, give a round of applause for Craig Dellimore.
Well, my job is really going to be sort of to be the ringmaster of what's going on up here. I also want to read you the rules, but mostly I want to welcome you all. The turnout here is great, and that's the kind of participation that's going to make a difference in any election, and it's good to see people interested because this is your chance to hear from all of the men, well, almost all of the men, running for governor on the Democratic side. One is not going to participate, we'll hear about that. But what I do want to ask is that 7 candidates, that's a lot of candidates for a forum. And so we're going to ask that you not have big outbursts and lots of applause every time somebody says something great, and absolutely no booze. We want everybody to be treated with respect. Don't forget, this is all Democrats. But to read, it's not just about a shouting match of who has more supporters. It's really about getting everything moving. Loud applause and long applause slows everything down, and you don't get to hear as many answers from the participants as they can give. So please do hold your applause, except for right now, as I am going to introduce the candidates one by one in alphabetical order. By the way, I also remind you that the candidates have some tables outside where you can get literature on their campaign. But let's start with the, let me first start, well, you know what, I'll do the rules once we get them inside. That way we can all hear them at the same time. But the candidates in alphabetical order, first is State Senator Daniel Biss. He represents the 9th District of Illinois. He was a House member before that. He grew up in Bloomington, Indiana, and moved to Chicago after getting a bachelor's degree from Harvard and a doctorate in mathematics from MIT. He's been a community organizer, and he says as a lawmaker he has worked to expand access, equity, and care for all Illinois. Next up is Bob Diver. He is the County, Illinois, along the Mississippi River. As an educator, he's been a career and technical teacher. As an administrator, he's developed innovative programs to help at-risk students succeed. He says he's running for governor to bring stability to the economy of the state and make government work for the people. Next up, Scott Drury. He is the third term as the state representative from suburban Highwood up north. He's an adjunct professor at Northwestern University School of Law. He was a federal prosecutor before that. As a lawmaker, he's helped lead the charge to pass assault weapon bans and gun regulations, and he says he tackled the issue of police reform before it was headline news. Next up, T.O. Hardiman. It's a not-for-profit group describing 12 violence in the neighborhoods before it happens. Prior to that, he worked with them for a time, directed Ceasefire. That's the group that treats gang violence as a public health emergency. He says as governor, he would focus on restoring integrity to state government and solving problems. Now, the next candidate who was supposed to join us is Chris Kennedy. But I will tell you that a couple of days ago, Mr. Kennedy's staff called and said that they apologized and that he was going to be unable to make it. That was not a lot of notice. They did not give a reason. I will tell you, as a reporter, I happen to know that he has a news event that is scheduled at 1 o'clock. That is an anti-violence event, and I suppose that must have conflicted with this. But we leave the sign up because the people who are here have the right to be present, and those who are not here, you have the right to know that they're not here. Next up is Alex Peterakis. He is born in Skokie. He got his degree in engineering from Purdue University. In 2011, he started 2 companies that he says serve the local community, support and hire veterans, and create jobs. He says he wants to be a leader who won't shy away from challenging and complex problems, but he will overcome them with effective solutions. Next, Maya Pawar. His election in 2011 made him the first Asian American on the city council. He's in his 2nd term as an alderman. He has 2 master's degrees from the University of Chicago. He has led efforts to pass ordinances on social justice, workers' rights, and government reforms, including paid sick leave. He champions affordable housing as well. And finally, Jamie Pritzker. Entrepreneur and philanthropist, and part of the family that owns the Hyatt Hotel chain, but he chose not to go into the hospitality field. He is a lawyer with a degree in political science. He chairs Chicago Next, which is the city's Council on Innovation and Technology, and he helped found 1871 as the high-tech entrepreneurial and business incubator. And once again, a round of applause for give you all the rules. Now, the candidates drew lots to determine the order in which they will give opening statements. Closing statements will be in reverse order, and I will try to manage that without messing it up. But I do have the order right here. If I don't drop the papers, we're cool. The candidate who makes the first opening statement, they said we'll move to the end of the line for the first question. Okay. That is fine. And the rotation will continue throughout the question period. And opening statements will occur in that order. They shall be no more than 2 minutes. Closing statements shall be no more than 2 minutes. When the allotted time has expired, candidates will be allowed to finish a sentence before the moderator and the timekeeper interrupt, and we will interrupt. And I caution all of you, that sentence that you can finish should not be a long run-on sentence that goes on forever. You know the trick. Okay. Following the opening statements, written questions submitted by the organization and the audience will be read by me. Candidates will alternate answering the questions. Will be given 75 seconds to answer the questions. So in other words, one question is asked, you all get to answer. Given the number of you and the number of questions I have right here, I think we have enough questions, so you don't have to worry about that. The Democratic Women in South Suburb are doing their best to consolidate duplicate questions. That's what this team right here is doing. So we will try to make sure that we get to cover as much ground as possible. Candidates are to address the questions and issues, and you're asked not to try to avoid dealing with the personalities of other candidates. Time will be kept by a timekeeper as parliamentarian, and countdown flags will be visible to the moderators and candidates, so don't be mad at me. In fact, don't be mad at us. It's the time, and we all want to be able to hear all of you as much as possible. Again, tables are provided for literature only outside of this. So again, many thanks, and we are going to start with opening statements. And first up will be Alice Pedrock.
Thank you all for inviting me here today to discuss the many issues we have in Illinois. And right now we have a bigot, a racist, a homophobic president out there. We have a governor that just does not care about anybody except his wealthy venture capitalist friends. And I love Illinois. I grew up here. I went to school here. And to see the state and go across the state and see individuals saying, oh, I have 2 years left here. I have 3 years left here. I can't wait till I leave this corrupt, just broken state. It just hurts me. Because I truly love this state. And a lot of things are causing that. We have social services that are underfunded. K through 12 education. Our children don't know when they're going to start school. Now, they may be happy about that, but it's not good for their education. Our private universities, our public universities are just outrageous for the cost that it takes to be, to actually go to these universities, and that's wrong as well. There's simple things we can do to change this great state. We need a progressive income tax system and not put the burden of taxes on the middle class and the poor. We need to protect the poor, because a lot of politicians talk about that, but not a lot actually do or have actions that actually resonate. I mean, when it comes to the poor, in politicians' eyes, no lives matter. And we need effective leadership that will come across the aisle to be able to compromise so that property taxes go down, to make sure that our families can afford to stay into this state, that our children can afford to go to school here. And that means not only higher education, that means K through 12, that means become go to technical schools. Again, this state is something worth fighting for. And I want to fight there with all of you to make sure that the mess that Governor Rauner has put into place will be fixed able to maintain and stay here, to make sure that you can afford to live here and make this state prosperous once more. So thank you again. I appreciate all your questions, and we will together make this state right.
All right, next up will be Scott Drury.
Morning. Our great state has come to be defined by public corruption, uncontrolled debt, and unimaginable gun violence. When we ask people across the state, do you think Illinois government is on your side? The overwhelming answer is no. When we ask people, do you think Illinois government is trying to do anything to fix that? The overwhelming answer is no. My name is Scott Drury, and I'm running for governor because I want to bring an honest change to the state of Illinois. I want to restore the foundation of trust between the public and the government. I want to make sure that we return Illinois government to its rightful owners, which is all of us in this room today. How are we going to do that? Well, in order to do that, we actually have to look at what's causing the problems. Illinois has been in a cycle, a downward cycle, for decades. And it hasn't just been a Republican problem, it has been a bipartisan problem where everybody has agreed to pay for things that we can't afford, which in the end has hurt all of us, and in the end what it has done is made sure that we don't provide the educational opportunities that every child in the state of Illinois is entitled to, that we don't provide the jobs that everyone in every community across the state is entitled to. So how do we fix that? How do we fix that? We have to tackle the problem where we see it. We have to stop the corruption in government, the corruption that is working for the politicians and not for all of us. Every day we open up the papers and we see about it, another indictment, another investigation. It makes people feel horrible. What else do we need to do? We need to stop talking about whether or not we have more taxes or less taxes, and we need to get to the issue of what is going on, and that is over $250 billion in debt that the state can't pay. And until we tackle that debt, we will not be able to move forward as a state. And so that is what we are going to do. Our plan is going to deal with the public corruption. Our plan is going to pay down the debt. And our plan is going to have competitive elections to make sure that politicians are accountable to you. I'm running for governor because I want to bring an honest change to Illinois. And I know that together we can have a better Illinois for everyone. Thank you.
Our next candidate is T.O. Harden.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm T.O. Harden. I'm running for governor here in the state of Illinois. This is not my first run. I ran for governor in 2014, and we secured close to 28.1% of the state vote, equaling 125,500 votes, and we won 30 counties downstate. I have a 2020 plan which represents a perfect vision for the people of Illinois. Part of my plan includes a progressive tax, which can bring in $2 billion of new revenue to the state of Illinois. And part of my plan is to support House Bill 453, which is about imposing a business transaction tax at Chicago Mercantile Exchange, Chicago Board of Options, and Chicago Board of Trade, which can bring in $3 billion of new income here for the state of Illinois. And under a 4-year Hardeman administration, that's $20 billion of new revenue. So we can work towards a surplus for the first time since Governor Jim Edgar back, a blast from the past. I'm running also to make history as the first African-American governor of the state of Illinois. I plan to turn my campaign into a big movement here throughout the state. I have affiliates down in Southern Illinois, Central Illinois, and my running mate will be an African-American lady. I want you all to know that. I will not reveal my running mate right now, but I plan to run with an African-American young lady, professional young lady that's going to help us really take this state by storm. And since we're here for Democratic women in the south suburbs, I want you all to know that I do support House Bill 3215, where women can learn with dignity and make sure we have feminine hygiene products in the school. I support House Bill 690, addressing gender discrimination, which 40,000 women are dealing with that right now in Illinois right now, okay? I'm the only candidate running that stood up against police brutality and excessive force. I've consoled over thousands of women that lost their kids to violence in Chicago by the police or by community violence. I helped rescue 12 women from a prostitution ring on the west side of Chicago and helped turn the lives around of about maybe 100 women that struggle with drug addiction. So I've been around for quite some time. I have a master's degree in inner city studies, and my motto and my slogan for my campaign is from a legendary blues singer, Lattimore, let's straighten it out. All right?
Our next candidate is Bob Geiger.
Thank you. I'm Bob Geiger. I'm from Madison County in southwestern Illinois. I'm the first candidate from Southern Illinois to run in a Democratic primary in 20 years. Takes a lot of courage from downstate to run because a lot of people do not believe that the nomination can be sought by such a person, but I do. Because I believe the division in the state needs to be brought to unification. And I think there's more in the state of Illinois that unites us than divides us. And we need to depolarize our whole political arena in Springfield and bring people together for the good of everyday people in the state of Illinois. In my past, I've served 22 years in local government in all levels, from being a trustee to a township supervisor, 2 terms on the county board before I was a county-wide elected official, which I serve today as regional superintendent. I proudly served the state from 2010 to 2012 as president of the regional superintendents in the state of Illinois at a very difficult time, in which I'm the only candidate that saw consolidation of a unit of government, in which the regional offices were consolidated from 42 to 35. I also experienced going 6 months with no pay because of a line item veto, in which I led to override. So I know personally about hardships that people face because of my personal encounters. But I want to say this. The most important thing that has to happen in this state, which I intend to lead, is financial stability of the state. We need to better fund our public schools, we need to better fund our community colleges, and we have to rebuild higher education in the state of Illinois. 16,000 young people chose last year to leave Illinois to go somewhere else to college because of the condition of our higher ed system. It is something that was built that this administration has allowed to crumble. We cannot allow this to continue on in Illinois. Just in closing, I want to tell you I will proudly represent all of Illinois. Thank you very much.
Our next candidate is Daniel Biss.
Good morning. Good morning. Maybe we should try that one again. Good morning. Good morning. There it is. I'm Daniel Biss. I'm state senator in the 9th district. I'm running for governor of Illinois. And listen, this wasn't the plan that I had for myself for this year, and being in politics wasn't the plan that I had for myself in life. I was teaching math. I was very happy teaching math. It's what I wanted to do. I know, there's no accounting for taste. And I saw our country spinning out of control under the administration of George W. Bush, heading off into war. I saw a movement of people coming together to change it, and I felt like I had to be a part of that. I started going door to door and block to block. I saw how people can come together in movements and make change and create justice, and I fell in love with that idea, and that's what brought me into politics. I've been in the legislature since 2011. I've been fighting hard there, and now I look at the situation, and I have never seen such an urgent need for a new political movement. Not just because of the nightmare being visited upon us by our president, but because of the damage that's been done to the state of Illinois and the opportunities that we're missing in the state of Illinois, that if only we were to seize, we could see better lives for all of us. And the other thing I see growing across this state is a movement of people rising up. I see indivisible t-shirts here in the front part of the section. I see my good friend Annie Lawrence from ABT in the front row. There are new groups of people everywhere in Illinois rising up to make change, and this is a unique moment. Now, what could be more important than to be here in the Southland, a region that has been left behind and forgotten about by state government, a region that's been overtaxed and underfunded, underinvested in, a region whose schools have not been funded properly because our politics have been paying attention to rich people from somewhere else and political machines that aren't here. It is time to build a political movement to bring equity to all of the state of Illinois. I'm running for governor to do just that. Thank you very much.
Our next candidate is Amaya Pawar.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Amaya Pawar, and I'm running for governor because I believe in social justice, I believe in equity, and I believe in fairness. I also believe that most people share in these values. But if we elect people who hate government, if we elect people who want to destroy the institutions they seek to represent, then none of the values that I believe that most people share, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, will be embodied at any level of government. Government's most basic charge, our contract with one another, is that we take care of one another. That's what we're supposed to do. That's a society. But when we elect people who live so far above government, and then pit us against one another for scraps. That's how we end up with reality TV stars and the mega rich running for government office, hating the institutions they seek to represent. What Bruce Rauner is doing is a game called Divide and Rule. What he does is he goes downstate to poor white communities and tells them that the reason why they don't get ahead is because those people in Chicago and Cook County do. That's what he does. And we know what he means by those people. It's different every day. One day it's immigrants, it's Jews, it's African Americans, it's Indians, whoever it is that he wants to turn into the other, that's what he does to make people scared about what's happening in their own life. He preys on people's economic anxieties, the lack of education funding, or the lack of good jobs in their own communities to turn people against others around the state. Now he's doing that so that nothing at the top ever changes. That's what wealthy people do when they want everyone at the bottom fighting over scraps. So I believe what we need is a new deal. One that brings our state government and our people together, black, white, and brown, Southern Illinois, Northern Illinois, and everything in between. And it rests on 4 key planks: education funding equity, universal child care, a jobs and capital bill, and criminal justice reform. It's time to come together. Thank you.
That's okay. You broke it. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is J.B. Pritzker, and I'm running for governor. Thank you. And I want to just take a moment just to thank Terry and to thank Sheena and to the Democratic women of the South Suburbs for putting this on. It's a terrific forum and a great opportunity to showcase that the Democratic Party produces terrific candidates, any one of which would be better than Bruce Rauner. I grew up in a home where my parents believed in economic justice and social justice, and they were fighting for it. They were activists. And in fact, it probably shouldn't surprise any of you that one of my very first jobs was working for one of the great civil rights governors of the 20th century. And then I went to work. I was a chairman of the Illinois Human Rights Commission, which is the state's civil rights court, and I turned it around. The Republicans had decimated it, and I worked together with Republicans and Democrats to make sure that people were getting justice faster. I also endowed the Center on Wrongful Convictions. Many of you may know it because you read it in the headlines when people get convicted of something and it turns out they didn't do the crime. It's that organization that helps them get out. President Obama asked me to run the White House Summit on Early Childhood because for more than 20 years I've been fighting for at-risk kids in preschool and childcare, making sure that we spread it across black and brown communities, low-income communities all across this country. I've created more than 10,000 jobs, both in my own business and in a nonprofit small business incubator called 1871 that I created in Chicago, something we can do all over this state. And there are 55,000 kids in Illinois who get school breakfast every single day because of the work that I did with the Greater Chicago Food Repository and Share Our Strength to expand President Obama's program across the state of Illinois. Southland needs a partner. Southland needs a governor who will be your partner in progressive income tax so that we can pay for schools and lower your property taxes and make sure that we're creating jobs across this state with economic development and small business creation. I'll be that governor fighting for you.
Okay, Alex Pennerock.
Thank you so much. So this is the biggest question, and Bruce Rauner has tried to divide us with the whole Mike Madigan issue. And the first thing that we can do is compromise. We've lost compromise, and that's the first thing. We agree with a lot of things, we disagree with a lot of things, such as property taxes, sales taxes, issues like that. But ultimately, we can come together to make a fair income tax system. To maybe, you know what, we don't get a constitutional amendment to change that, but what we should have done with this budget was make it so incomes under $250,000 got a tax credit so that we create a little bit of a buffer so that we can get a constitutional amendment. Again, people have worked with Mike Madigan before. I disagree with a decent amount of his policies, but you know what? Compromise is not dead in this country. It is not dead within this state, and together, by the pressure that we can put on our government, come together and make this state prosperous once more.
Thank you. Scott Brewery, you're next.
Thank you. On January 11th of 2017, I proudly became the first Democrat in 3 decades not to vote for Mike Madigan to be Speaker of the House in Illinois. And people ask, why did you do that? Was it just some, you just want publicity? No, the reality is that the power of the Speaker of the House comes from 60 people coming together and voting for him, even though a majority of the public says they shouldn't. And why does that happen? Because people are terrified. We don't have a democracy anymore. People are scared. I had one colleague say, are you going to run for Speaker? I said, I don't know. What do you think? She's like, I would be with you, but I'm scared I'm going to lose my chairmanship and the $10,000 that goes with it. That has nothing to do with policy, no. It has nothing to do with progressive values that people believe in. It has nothing to do with fixing the issues, the very serious issues that we have to deal with in the Southland. So I firmly believe that if we are going to beat, and we are going to beat Bruce Rauner, we have to look inward. We have to explain why we are bad and what we're going to do to fix our own party before we can just attack the others. What scares me is that this election and these debates are becoming very similar to the end of the Democratic presidential debates, where all we were doing was attacking the other side. And what did that get us? A lot of people didn't vote for Donald Trump, but they also didn't vote for the Democratic nominee for president. If we want to be great and we want the Democratic Party to rule the state again, we need people who have stood up and shown actual leadership, and I'm the only one sitting here at this table who has a track record of doing that and a track record of fighting for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Tito Hartman.
I have a history of being a peacemaker and bringing both sides together. Mike Madigan has been around, he has seniority. The reason Bruce Brown and Mike Madigan are in this epic battle is because you have a battle against with seniority versus big money. And Bruce Brown is trying to run the state as a dictator. And to back up what I'm saying is that when he made a comment on the news that you better not override my veto, that's trying to pressure people. Mike Madigan really is what you call, and I don't know how people may take this, my thing is I plan to work with Mike Madigan because he's not going anywhere. But like one of the other gentlemen said, compromise is still on the table. I believe in Mike Madigan with the right leader like a T.O. Hardeman, and I express my vision for the state of Illinois. I think we can all get along and work together. That's the way I look at Mike Madigan because he's been around just too long and he's not going to go anywhere. Everybody supports Mike Madigan, and I'm not here saying that I support him 100%. I want to make that clear. Mike Madigan has problems just like Bruce Rauner, but in the meantime, Bruce Rauner is going to lose this election, and Mike Madigan is going to still be there. Okay.
Thank you. And Bob Dyer, you're up.
Well, when two men sit down at a table and they roll up their sleeves to try to get something done, they have to have some commonalities. And we have two people that sit at the table that are directly polar different, there's problems. And when Bruce Rauner came into office, he laid out a turnaround agenda that was about everything that Mike Madigan is for. He went against organized labor, he wanted to diminish collective bargaining, he wanted to reform workers' compensation, and these are all factors that Mike Madigan has upheld. So when you go to the table and you're going to deal with someone, you can't go there with a threatening agenda. And my agenda that I will go to the table with to work with Mike Madigan to get things done will be one, to move Illinois forward, to make it progressive, to develop jobs in this state, to bring about economic security, and one that I think he will be interested in, not one that he's going to look at the governor sitting across the table from him trying to threaten him. And that, I think, has been our first and foremost problem as to why we did not have a budget for over 2 years, is because it was just two direct opposite. The governor's agenda was to take down the speaker. The speaker fought back, and that's why we are where we are today, and that won't happen in my administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's start here. Mike Madigan is too powerful. Mike Madigan's been Speaker for too long. That power has held the state of Illinois back, and it's held the Democratic Party back. And that's important to say. And it's not something I say just now. It's not something I say only when it became cool. It's something that I first said when I ran for state representative a decade ago, and have been saying ever since. That's why I put in a constitutional amendment almost immediately after I was inaugurated, saying you can't serve as Speaker of the House for more than 10 years, because I think that longevity creates a concentration of power that's dangerous for the rest of us. But here's the thing. I'm also going to work with anyone. And I also, while sticking to that position strongly in the legislature, I've never got a lot done by figuring out what it takes to move Mike Madigan and how it's possible to work with anybody, including Mike Madigan. And here's what it really takes to get that done. It's not, to be honest, totally about convincing him that we're right or convincing him that our policies are right for the people of Illinois. It's about pushing him, it's about moving him, it's about building movements of people prepared to demand of their state representatives that we enact the right policies. I'm running for governor to build a movement of people, not just to elect me, because frankly, who cares about that? I'm running for governor to build a movement to transform politics and government in Illinois and make the legislature do what the people of Illinois have needed for a long, long time.
Thank you. So when I ran for office in 2011 as alderman, I didn't have any endorsements or any money. I just knocked on every single door, and I beat the Chicago machine. I say that because after I got into office, then I worked with, and sometimes against, the same people who worked against me. That's democracy. It's compromise. It's dragging people along to make change. And I've passed over a dozen pieces of legislation in my time in office. Same thing can be happening in Springfield. It's about dragging people along, holding them accountable to the issues that they say they believe in, like the millionaire surcharge that the speaker said he does, the elected school board in Chicago, a progressive income tax. All of these things have been led out of committee, including a $15 an hour minimum wage. So if we have a Democrat in the governor's mansion, it's not to hold the speaker accountable and everyone else who said they're for it, including the governor. That is what democracy is about. It's about bringing people together that don't always agree on issues to make change on behalf of people. If everything becomes about personality and one person, that's a race to the bottom. And that's how we get to this place where we have Bruce Rauner throwing money against one person, because all he wants to do is divide us and make us fight over scraps. We can't allow ourselves to succumb to that. Thank you.
And J.D. Griffin.
Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, I've been an independent leader, an independent thinker my whole life, and I think I've accomplished an awful lot, not only creating jobs in a business that I built, but also helping to feed kids across the state, making sure that there's health care and that kids are getting early childhood education, making sure that we're building up our institutions to fight for criminal justice reform. I think that as governor, I'm going to get things done just as I have in my private life, and just as I have, frankly, serving the public sector, running the Human Rights Commission, or as I did when I worked in the United States Senate. But I think we got to stop throwing the leadership of the Democratic Party at each other. That is Bruce Rauner's game. It is his game to make us fight each other in this primary so that he's got an easier chance in the general election. That's why I have not said one cross word about anybody that's on this stage. I have been adamant about the fact that we need to focus every day on the failings of Bruce Rauner. That's the guy that's made the mistakes in this state. That's the guy that stood up against working families, and I'm going to beat him in a general election.
Our next question, I'm going to turn to something that a couple of you have touched on, but I want to get everybody on record on this, and that is, you know this is a savvy group when everybody speaks in bill numbers. But fortunately, most of them also include what those bill numbers are about. So the question is, do you support House Bill 262? That is the fight for the $15 minimum wage, the effort to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2022. And how would you go about getting this passed in Illinois? Once again, starting at the top of the key and that would be Alex Peterakis.
Thank you. When I started my businesses, I wanted not only to provide jobs for veterans, but to pay my workers what they were worth. My successes were my workers' successes. And each of my 40 employees gets at least $14 an hour right now. I'm not mandated by that. I'm not told by the government to do that, but I do that because their success helped me get to where I was today. I support the $15 minimum wage, and I hope that this can get through the legislation, that Governor Rauner's veto will be overridden, and that people can actually live in Illinois and afford to live in Illinois, because that's what it's all about. This state is great and will continually be great with this $15 minimum wage increase.
Okay. Scott Drury.
As a member of the House of Representatives, I'm proud to say that I voted in favor of the Fight for 15. But I gave a speech on the floor when I voted for that and said that it was a bittersweet day. And why was that? Because when we had the votes in 2013, in 2014, in 2015, and 2016 even, to actually pass a $15 minimum wage, either had a Democratic governor who would have signed it or enough votes to override any veto, the House leadership and the Senate leadership didn't call those bills for a vote. They waited until we had a Republican governor and only 67 Democrats, not a supermajority, to actually call that for a vote. So why do I say that? Because as someone who is actually in the House trying to fight for real change, I've grown cynical of what the party is doing to all of us. It's not the Democratic Party that we represent. It's not the core values that we represent. It's become a party that's about winning. It's become a party that's about embarrassing the other side. But at the end of the day, someone who needed that $15 is not going to get it this year because of the politics that we're playing. And so I want to bring honest change to Illinois. I want to talk about the realities of what's going on. And that means sometimes we do, like I said, we have to look inward at our party and make sure that we come out of this better. Because if we can't make our case to people why we are better than Governor Rauner, him just being the worst is not going to be enough.
Thank you. And I just take a moment to thank everybody who seemed to give their marks on this. This is really helping us go along. Feel harder about that.
Once again, I'm one of the only candidates sitting up here that stood on the front line with everybody marching for the $15 minimum wage, the fight for 15. I've been at every rally, supported every step of the process. Initially with my 2020 plan, when we impose a business transaction tax, we can use some of the funds there to help provide incentives for small businesses that might really lose with the $15 minimum wage. But at the same time, I support the $15 minimum wage, but I do not support it for 2022. I support $15 for right now. When I become your governor, we need to push that forward because 2022 is a few years away. We need a minimum wage increase of $15 right now for the working class and poor people of Illinois. And I sincerely would push that agenda immediately as soon as I become your governor.
I support the $15 an hour minimum wage increase, but I immediately support a $10 an hour minimum wage tomorrow. No one could be living or working on a minimum wage at the rate of $8.75. Okay, that's where we are today. I live right next to St. Louis in Missouri, and I want to tell you bad news. Their minimum wage drops from $10 to $7.50. Now imagine going backwards in a state. And I say that to you because that's why the next governor of this state, who it is so important. That you've got a governor that will move a minimum wage forward rather than make it regressive, such as Governor Greitens has in Missouri. And if I'm the next governor, you'll see a progressive minimum wage. You'll also see something else come into place, something far beyond the minimum wage, which I call a living wage. A living wage is one in which people can actually live on, pay their bills, and has a COLA factor built into it. That's a cost of living increase, because when your utility bill goes up and you're making minimum wage, that's just less money you have to help support your family and your causes. So that is my goal, to help people live better in the state of Illinois and have better paying jobs. Thank you.
I've been fighting for wage increases for a long time. I was a proud co-sponsor of the minimum wage $15 bill that's currently at Governor Rauner's desk. And by the way, if you're listening, Governor, there's still time to change your mind. Sign that bill. Now, I will tell you that there were some Democrats who weren't sure, is 15 too much? I would know, should we wait a year? I fought hard to make sure we took that vote, we passed that bill, we found the votes to do it. I've been fighting for minimum wage increases for a long time. I've been fighting to pass a bill to increase the wages of people who work for state contractors and subcontractors to be a living wage as well. I've been fighting for paid sick leave. I've got a bill to introduce family leave. We have to have a comprehensive policy here in the state of Illinois that says that if you're working in Illinois, you have a shot at a middle-class life, not just a living wage, but decent standards of living and the ability to raise a family. And guess what? Cook County has a minimum wage ordinance right now, and municipalities have been trying to opt out of that ordinance. And though I'm a state legislator, not a local elected official, I've been fighting tooth and nail and winning battles at village halls and city councils to make sure that our communities aren't opting out of the minimum wage. I've been doing everything I can to increase wages and standards of living. As governor, I'm going to make sure we have living wages for all.
Thank you. So I actually worked on raising the minimum wage in the city of Chicago. I was the lead sponsor on the paid sick leave ordinance. So starting in July of this year, 500,000 people in our city in the city of Chicago have basic dignity to earn paid sick leave, to call in sick if they're sick or if their family member's sick. In Chicago, the minimum wage will go up to $13 an hour. We need a statewide $15 an hour minimum wage. And we have to actually stop talking about these issues as if we're somehow enriching people. These are just basic dignities. Paid sick leave, paid family leave, raising the minimum wage, fair scheduling. All of these things are what people who wear shirts and ties have when they go to work. Yet we deny these basic dignities of working people simply because we look down on them. That's the problem. Our public policy is based on deserving and undeserving, and that is a shame, and that needs to change. We need to stop talking about these progressive policies as if we're rewarding people. We're just raising the standard so that we can have a decent society, so people can raise a family and hopefully get ahead. Thank you.
So I'm, of course, in answer to the question, I'm in favor of a $15 minimum wage, and I've been for quite some time now. But, you know, we used to call it a living wage. It isn't a living wage anymore. $15. Nobody actually wants to earn $15 an hour. People want to earn $25, $35, $50 an hour. People want to do better. But there's only one way that we can really make that happen after we raise the minimum wage, and that's create jobs in the state. Last year we had 0.5% job growth. 0.5% job growth in Illinois. There are a lot of reasons for that, but the number one reason is Bruce Rauner created uncertainty for businesses and for workers all across Illinois. And so we don't have any competition for labor that's raising labor rates here in Illinois. We have no competition, in fact, for labor. That's how we need to get our wages up in the state, create jobs. We can do it by, and I've introduced a program for this, for helping small businesses. You know, 2/3 of all of our jobs that get created in the state are created by small businesses. 2/3. Now we need access to capital, we need technical assistance and mentorship for new small businesses to get started, and for small businesses to be able to access capital so they can grow. That's what I'll be all about as well.
Thank you. For our next question, I am going to combine a couple of questions. Both involving pensions. One is, and I think we can expand this beyond who is being asked about, but it's what will you do to ensure retired teachers retain their promised pensions? But also, I'm going to add in the question, would you tax retirement income? Okay, starting off with Alex Interactive.
I got you. So, first off, Republicans have always demonized these pensions, saying they're making these lavish pensions, they're going to live off you for the rest of their life, which is not the case for most individuals. If you were promised a pension, it is immoral to take that pension away. And you tax that, and being told that you're going to be taxed on that, after the fact you were told that you wouldn't be taxed on that, is an atrocity. Now, what can we do? We do have a pension liability. What we can do is people that want to move it to a 401k should be able to do that. Make it optional to do that. A lot of people are scared that their pension won't be there, that Illinois will play politics with their pensions and it may not be there. Let those individuals move it to a 401k option. But then also reform incoming talent into the public education or public sector so that we can reduce some of the burden. But again, it is immoral to take something away that you were promised. It'd be like taking Social Security away. It'd be taking basic rights away, and that is immoral.
Thank you.
Thank you. The number one problem confronting Illinois right now is its pension liability. And I remember in 2013 when I first got into the House, I was new. Senator Biss was pushing changing people's pension rights, calling me up saying we should be taking it away. And we passed a law and it was found to be unconstitutional. And so now we're left with a few options. And we have to deal with the pension debt because these questions about taxes and everything, they all really get at the fact that we are trying to catch up to the debt. But we have to do it in a way that doesn't take away people's benefits. So how are we going to do that? How are we really going to fix Illinois? Well, we have to fix that debt. So one of the ways we can do that is that we can offer people, don't force them, but we can offer them the option of getting bought out. And I believe that is a fair way to do it. The pension systems themselves say that in 25 to 35% will take the buyout. And if we can get them, if we can offer people something and they want to take it, then that reduces our debt. And not only does it reduce our debt, but what it does is it brings money back into the system without a tax increase. 26 cents of every dollar that you spend in taxes right now is going to pay interest on our debt. If we can get that interest back, we can get that 26 cents back. All of this discussion about taxes, it goes away because we automatically get 26 cents back on every dollar. That's how we have to tackle this problem with fresh solutions that don't punish the people that will promise something and want to take it away.
Tito Harden.
Yeah, there's no way in the world or in the universe that we should tax a person's pension. It doesn't make no sense to me, so I'm not in favor of taxing any pensions. When it comes down to teachers, we have to hear this clearly. That's one of my number one priorities. Teachers should not have to worry about their pensions, and teachers should not have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to pay their bills because they're working. So I plan to protect the teachers' pensions, and also, once again, going back to my 2020 plan, which is included in the plan, that we're going to set aside more funds to make sure that the pensions are not tampered with. For far too long, and this is something people may not want to hear, we've been robbing Peter to pay Paul for far too long here in the state of Illinois, and we need a governor that's going to straighten it out for the teachers and for everybody. I'm a state employee, former state employee myself. I worked for UIC School of Public Health for 14 years, so I have a pension coming from the state, and I don't want to wait to 20 years from now, and my pension is taxed. It hits me personally. So as your governor, I plan to be a champion for the poor and working class people of Illinois as your leader. So that's my position right there.
Well, let me tell you, I'm really concerned about the teachers' retirement system because if I don't win, I'm going to be an annuitant. I'm invested in that retirement system, and I want to clarify something a lot of people don't understand about that real quick. For 20 years of my years of service, I paid 9% of my gross salary. My district paid 1.2% of my gross salary to TRS. For the next 8 years of my time being a teacher, I paid 9.2% of my gross salary, and my district paid 1.4% to the teachers' retirement system. So the money that goes into these retirement systems, I don't want people being misconstrued that this is all state money. These are gross earnings. These are people's salaries. These are not benefits. This is money that we've invested in the retirement system. And do we have, yes, do we have the right for that retirement? We sure do, because that's our investment. And we do not get Social Security. There is no Social Security paid. If you earned your 40 quarters, you fall under the Social Security offset provision and get a minimal amount of Social Security, even compared to what you paid. So if you opt a person out of retirement, they have no Social Security. They have no retirement, so you've got to be careful. But first and foremost, I want to tell you, people who are teachers need to pay in because you have to have money going in to pay the people who are retiring. That is very important, and you've got to make wise legislative decisions. I would have never allowed the ERO to sunset to cost TRS an additional $432 million a year.
Thank you. We have more pension debt than any other state. The question is, how do we get there? Did we get there because we have more generous pensions than other states? No. No. Our pensions now are less generous than other states, and until 2011, they were pretty much in line. Did we get there because we have more teachers per capita than all other states? No. Maybe it would be bad if we did, by the way, but we sure don't. We got there because for generation after generation, we didn't make a proper payment into the system. Generation after generation. Teachers put theirs in, state didn't. And so now, the chickens have come home to roost, and we have to make a payment. The only solution will force us to make the actual required responsible payment every year. Not just when it's convenient, not just when we're in the mood to do it, but every single year. The best funded pension system in Illinois, the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, does just that. By the way, in Texas, the Constitution says the teacher's pension system gets their payment every year, and sure enough, they're in good shape. We have to do that. Now, the reason it's been hard to do that is because we have a tax system that's broken. We have to fix our tax system. Unless we can have a progressive tax and finally ask the richest residents to pay their share, we're going to continue to have trouble affording it. If we can fix our tax system, force the richest people who have for generations been the beneficiaries of economic growth that haven't paid their share to finally pay their share, we'll be able to afford it, and we have to do it every single year.
Thank you. So will I protect teacher pensions? Yes. Will I tax them? No. But I think we need to turn the whole conversation on retirements and pensions on its head. Because here's the thing. We have allowed a few demagogues to make it okay to question the salaries and pensions of a teacher or a carpenter or a union worker, that somehow that is part of government reform. It's okay to question their benefits. But if I question the equity or the fairness of Bruce Rauner making $200 million a year and paying the same tax rate that everyone else does, I'm some sort of raging communist. That conversation needs to turn on its head, and what we should be talking about is not pitting the private sector against the public sector, is demanding that we raise the Social Security limit so that we have retirement security for everybody and stop fighting over scraps.
So, ladies and gentlemen, our pensions are a contract. When a state worker, a teacher, a firefighter, or a policeman takes their job, they're not getting overpaid. They're getting promised, actually, they're relatively getting underpaid and getting promised a pension. That's part of the deal. That was the contract that was entered into when they took the job. Now, Bruce Rauner essentially wants to cut by 40% what pensioners would get. That's morally wrong. It's also, according to the Supreme Court of Illinois, legally wrong. And now we need to step up to the plate and pay for the pensions. Now, can we do it? Yes, we can. Now, part of the answer, of course, is a progressive income tax. It also means looking at the pension system, recognizing that governors in the past have skipped payments, which has caused some of this problem. But it also means that we've got to step up the payments into the system, just like you would if you had a challenge with the amortization schedule on your own home, and it was going like this. You'd step up the payments early in order to flatten out the payments later. That's what we need to do now. That's how we can fix the system. And there is a proposal to do that. We can do that now. Now, I want to make sure you know that I will stand up for pensions, in part because I believe it in my heart. Also know that the 17 labor unions that are supporting me and the statewide AFL-CIO that's supporting me are supporting me because they know I will be the governor who will make our pension system whole. Thank you.
The conversation's been going a little bit now. This one may be quick answers here, but heavy topic. What's your position on charter schools? Okay, we start with Alex Pederakis.
I believe that individuals should be able to choose their own schools. We're in America, you can choose your own schools, but I don't think there needs to be regulation against charter schools taking away every single public job or public school position. Teachers are the second, if not the first, most influential group that a child, when they're growing up. And I believe that school choice should be someone's choice, but there needs to be positions in place to make sure that public schools are getting similar and being funded similarly to charter schools.
Next up would be Scott Jury.
So I'm proud as a state representative to have been endorsed by the teachers' unions, but also to be honest with them and say that in certain situations there may be a need for a charter school. I represent the North Shore, some of the wealthiest schools in the country, and definitely the state. I also represent parts of North Chicago, some of the most underfunded schools in the state. And in North Chicago, there was a need when the school board was being indicted, the public school board was being indicted. There was a need for a charter school to help lift up the public school. And those two schools have coexisted. I've talked with the charter school people and I've talked with the public school members when there's been fights between them. I've worked them out and have found that we have been able to make huge strides in the education of the children. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about the kids. I believe that every child in Illinois and in America has the right to a good education. And in in my district, I can see that we are not delivering on that promise to our young children. And so the fight can't be about charters and money. It has to be what is in the best interest of the children. And if there's a situation where it makes sense that we need, that there's a school that is not doing what it should be doing, we want to help that school, and we're doing that in North Chicago. The state has taken it over and is working to make the schools better. But we've also been using the charter school as an incubator of thought to help lift up both of the schools. And so with that position, like I said, I've been able to earn the endorsement of the teachers' unions because I think it's just the honest answer and the right answer.
Thank you. T.O. Hardin?
Yes, I support the public school system all the way. Charter schools, there's no data that can back up the fact that charter schools are outperforming public schools here in Illinois. Take a look at the numbers, okay? But at the same time, when you have a charter school, that means that somebody funded that particular charter school. So therefore, there shouldn't be no real argument when it comes down to public education in the state of Illinois. My priority would be making sure that we fund the schools on the highest level possible to ensure that the schools are on the right track when it comes down to educating and their performance levels, and put some systems in place to monitor the progress of the schools that are failing and make sure we bring them up to par. Because there are models out there in the educational universe that really work when it comes to educating our young people across Illinois. But my main priority as your governor would be to support public schools, because I'm a graduate of a public school myself, and I know many, many people that graduated from public schools that are doing real good in their lives, whether they're white, black, Hispanic, Asian, or whoever they may be. People that really progress in the public school system here in Illinois, and we need to strengthen our school system.
Thank you. Bob Dyer.
Well, I have openly opposed charter schools. I believe charter schools lead off revenue from our public schools because that's how they are financed. The performance of charter school students is not as great as that of public school students. I have a footnote, something in USA Today of March 2017. Only 9% of students who attended charter schools graduate from college. So imagine that. Look at that. March 2017, USA Today. It's a footnote. You can see it, especially in at-risk communities. So here's what I have to say. You reinvest into public schools, okay? The money that we have been taking from them, we build better public schools, and that's where our interest should be. If you want a choice, there's plenty of private schools, there's parochial schools, but I'm not for taking money from public education to fund other institutions that aren't held to the same standards as public schools are.
Let's start here. We need a moratorium on charter schools now. It is crazy to think that we are shutting down neighborhood schools, taking money out of the public school system, and then taking that money and using it to build a charter school somewhere else. It doesn't make sense. I have 2 children. They're going to 2nd and 4th grade next year into the neighborhood school. We walk to school in the morning. We have ties to our neighborhood, to our community. It strengthens the community. It roots the community. It builds a neighborhood where we look out for each other and support each other. And yet, for some reason, in many of the poorest parts of the state of Illinois, we're going the opposite direction of shutting schools down. It's a terrible idea. We've got to put it to a stop. I'm going to give you one other example of the bill that I just helped pass and put on the governor's desk in the legislature. This bill is about the Charter School Commission. Here's how the Charter School Commission works right now in Illinois. Charter school goes to a school district and says, hey, we want to open. The school district says, no, we don't think that's right for our community. That's not the end of the story. Instead, the charter school can appeal to a state commission appointed by the governor. I voted for a bill. It's now on the governor's desk to get rid of that process so the decision can be made locally, and we can't have some kind of state bureaucracy to force a charter school down the throats of local communities and pull money out of local schools. So that's why we
Government should not be run like a business, and neither should schools. I am sick and tired of watching public institutions be privatized so that a few people can decide what happens to the rest of us. But more importantly, if you come to my neighborhood, I represent a community in the north side of Chicago. I've made neighborhood schools my all-in from the very beginning. But the truth is, the major reason why my schools are so successful is I represent a middle upper middle class neighborhood. Those kids that go to my schools bring their privilege with them to school. So when we close schools in struggling communities because of a test score or what we believe is performance, We are not addressing the underlying issue, which is poverty, what's going on at home, or the fact that kids sometimes, the only meal they eat every day is at school. Government is not a business. Schools should not be privatized. And that means that investing in your neighborhood schools means investing in your neighborhood and building a strong neighborhood. Closing schools means closing a community. And that means we also have to recognize that public education has to be at the top of our list when we create a progressive income tax.
So I'm opposed to any expansion of charter schools across this state, and we ought to pass that moratorium immediately and make sure that the new governor signs it. Yeah, because this one won't. But I'm also in favor of making sure that the charter schools that are in existence today live up to a standard, that if they don't meet a standard, they should be closed. And the ones that are there, by the way, ought to have collective bargaining rights so that we can have unionized teachers in those schools. We need to stop tearing down our public schools. We need to instead build them up. And it's important for us, part of the reason that I think all of us are in favor of a progressive income tax system is we believe that the state needs to step up to the plate on public education. That 26% funding from the state is all we get for public education. In other words, of all the funding, only 26% comes from the state. You know what? That's the last among 50 states. Of all 50 states, we're the lowest. I never thought I'd say that about the state of Illinois, that we'd be last. But that's what we're last at. If we doubled it, we'd be average in the United States. So we need to step up to the plate for public education and not tear them down with more charter schools.
Thank you. Continuing with education for one more question, how can we make college more affordable? Okay, starting with Alex Penerac.
Yeah, we talk about student debt quite often, and at a local level and at a state level, we cannot affect the interest rates. But what we can affect is the cost to go to school and the funding to put more funding in our higher education system, and not only our higher education system, but the programs teaching kids, hey, you don't want to go to college, you don't want to go to community college, you can go into industry and earn and become a union worker. That's something that we don't. When I went to school, I was not taught that I could do something except I need to go to college, I will find a good job and everything, and I was lied to. You have to work hard. We have lost that and told kids you have to go to college. It may not be right for everyone. But what we need to do is, if we raise new taxes, we got to make sure that those taxes go to their intended purposes. Lottery system, 24% only goes to education. It's supposed to be 100%. If we legalize cannabis, they say, you know, it's going to go a little bit here, a little bit there. I am not for lockboxing full amounts of money for net new taxes, but we got to hold our politicians responsible. If they say we're going to use money to fund something, let's say through the legalization of cannabis or the expansion of gambling, which I think only needs to happen in American court, that we lock certain funds in so that we can reduce the amount that it takes to go to a 4-year or 2-year college. And that's our right. We need to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Illinois has to have a serious conversation with itself and with the public about what are our priorities. You know, we talk a lot about funding education in public schools. I attend public schools, I attend a public university. But the fact is that we're not funding our public universities, and so we're requiring those universities to find funding for somewhere else. It's the University of Illinois, they're raising tuition, they're looking out of the country to put students in, and they're making it almost impossible for kids in this state to go to those schools. During the 2.5 years of the ridiculous budget impasse, was really just two people in a very weak little General Assembly saying, we know we need new revenue, but we just don't want to admit it. Who was getting slaughtered in that? Who was getting slaughtered? We didn't fund it. Public universities. One year we funded 30% and we heralded that as some sort of victory by giving them 30%. The next year we did not make that up. That was money that was lost. So if we are serious and we really believe in public education, then we have to say it's a priority within our budget, and we have to say that we are going to pay those universities what they need. And we want to have flagship universities in the state. We are failing the students of the state of Illinois by not keeping our promise that is saying that we believe that not only just K through 12, but in secondary, in post-secondary education, that we are going to fund that. And until we make a commitment to that, it's all just words.
When it comes down to plan to do as a governor. I feel like I'm the governor already talking to you. This is the thing here. We need to meet with some of the wealthy people in Illinois, and I'm just going to use LeBron James as a model. LeBron James is sending 100 students to college every year. LeBron James is doing that. Instead of funding a lot of the charter schools, we need to put together a fund here in Illinois under my administration where we can have incentives for students that come from certain communities like, the south suburban areas, Peoria, Decatur, East St. Louis, Jacksonville, Kankakee, all throughout the state, where we have a fund set aside to help some of these students make sure we can reduce their college costs. That's the only way you can do it. You got to set funds to the side and make sure the funds go for what they're set aside for. Real simple mathematics there. Mathematics, rather, that's how we can help these students reduce the cost, because it's hard out here. A lot of young people cannot attend college because they do not have the funds. And we need to expand our scholarship programs here in the state of Illinois as well. And that's major. That's like I say, education is one of my #1 priorities, and that's what I plan to do within my plan as well.
Well, I previously stated that definitely something had to be happened to the brain drain in Illinois. That we had 16,000 students that left last year. I imagine we'll be close to that rate again when we look at this fall. So, there's got to be a commitment on the state as to how we're going to retain our best and our brightest here and how we're going to invest. And I believe that has to involve a corporate partnership with our major industries in the state, our major businesses in the state, that want to have ownership in their product that they're going to get, that's going to be their graduate, the person they're going to employ. So if you go to some other states, and I'm going to pick Oklahoma University as an example, you'll see ExxonMobil's a prime sponsor in the petroleum engineering program there at the Melbourne campus. You'll see other institutions throughout the United States where their corporate partners are major sponsors, and they help young people attain higher education. We also need to live up our responsibility. Prior to this forum, we were having a conversation about supporting our community college. I'm a product of the community college program, and I know what it allowed a kid like me to go to school. And the state should pay a third, property taxes pay a third, and tuition pays a third, and that's not happening today. So for many people that can't afford higher ed, this is where you start, community college, because that's how I did it.
100 years ago, we made a deal as a society. We figured out that if you wanted people to have an equal shot at a middle-class life, you needed to have a high school education. And so we decided we've got to make that available to everybody. We need to make that free. That's not a luxury anymore, that's a necessity. Well, guess what? It's 2017. And for most people in our society, most people in our economy, a high school diploma isn't enough. Something additional is necessary to have an equal shot at a middle-class life, whether that's a 4-year university degree, a community college degree, a certification, an associate's degree, or vocational training. Something else is necessary. And so by the exact same reasoning, we have a moral obligation to make college free for all. Now guess what? That's going to take some time. Guess what? The state of Illinois right now is going in the wrong direction, making college more expensive. But we need to understand that that's what today's economy demands us to do. And then we got to find overtime the money to pay for it. And if we don't go to the people who have for generations been benefiting from the economic growth while everyone else's kids are having a harder and harder time getting into college and therefore competing, we're not going to be able to afford it. We have to fix our tax system, make the rich pay their share, pay for our universities and community colleges, and make tuition free.
Thank you. This is why I believe we need to have tuition-free college, and we should be doubling down on our public institutions. So my parents are immigrants from India. My dad was born in a home without running water or electricity, lived on a dirt floor. When they came here, they lived out the American dream. But that American dream meant that they didn't have any money saved up for my sister or I for college. So I've got $250,000 in education loans. So my wife says, I married you and your student loans. Love you, baby. But here's what it means. I make $108,000 a year as an owner. Half of my paycheck, monthly paycheck, goes to paying my student loans. So if something happened to my wife's job, who is our breadwinner, we'd be wiped out. That's the reality of the American dream. So if we don't make it possible for people to go to college and not come out saddled with debt, we're headed in the wrong direction. Now, I bet on myself and I wouldn't change a thing. But one thing goes wrong, and we'd be in trouble as well. And that is a sad reality of the United States of America.
So here's the problem we face today. Bruce Raumer doesn't know the difference between an investment and an expense. That's the truth. That he doesn't understand that education in this state is an investment for the future. It's not an expense that you cut. He thinks you should just line item veto out education. He's wrong. So we've got to stand up for our education system, and frankly, here at Prairie State, where you're training people for manufacturing jobs, and we have tens of thousands of jobs across the state, by the way, that are available that people aren't trained for. People don't have the skills for. So we need to train people, and they get trained here at community colleges. And they can get trained in vocational training in high schools, which we have to bring back. It's time. People are going to get a job out of high school. But lastly, lifelong learning. Everybody knows that jobs are changing. It used to be when my parents graduated from college, they could get a job and they could keep it for their whole lives and not have to go back to school. Today, the jobs are shifting, slowly shifting. And that means even the job that you've got today is going to change. That means lifelong learning is hugely important. That's why Prairie State is so important. That's why Governor State is so important. It's why Chicago State is so important. We've got to stand up for these institutions. We're losing faculty. We're not paying for MAP grants. You wonder why kids are not going to school here in Illinois, because you can get a better deal in another state. It's ridiculous, right? And faculty are getting up and leaving because we're not paying their salaries, because they're furlough days, because there are all the challenges that are, programs are closing, and kids are choosing to leave because the programs they want aren't here anymore, and because they don't know whether we're going to help them pay their college tuition. We've got to look at education as an investment, not an expense.
All right, we actually only have 5 more minutes before we have to go to closing statements. So this is going to sort of be like a lightning round question because, bless our hearts, one person in this audience put 2 completely separate questions on one card, and I'm going to ask it just the way, because you have to help this woman out. She says she has 2 deal breakers for her vote. 1, are you pro-choice? 2, do you support marriage equality? Starting with Alice Penrad.
Easy answer, they're guessing yes. But there's so many times that when we talk about women's reproductive rights or women's health, it's just men. And it happens with children too. It's just men in the space. And that is totally and utterly wrong. Now, marriage equality, why is this even a conversation at this point anyway? If someone wants to get married to somebody, who am I to say? And that's, God honest truth. So yes, yes.
Okay. Next up would be Scott Drury.
I am such a proud supporter of both of those issues. HB 40 was on the governor's desk, which is the bill that if this Republican national administration and the Supreme Court justices that they're appointing should ever take away the women's right to choose at the national level, we'll make sure that we keep that right here. That bill is sitting on the governor's desk, and I'm a proud co-sponsor of it. And the governor is signing that bill. That was a promise that he made when he ran for office, and he should be keeping that promise. Marriage equality, I was a proud supporter of that legislation too, and was glad to be at the signing of that bill. These are things that are going on in the General Assembly. We talk about all of the bad things, but there is a fight going on in the General Assembly on a daily basis for our rights, whether it's women's rights to choose, whether it's marriage equality, whether it's making sure that our streets are safe with responsible firearms legislation, whether it's keeping our environment safe so that we can walk around in nature and have drinking water that we can actually drink. These are the issues that the Democratic Party and I, as a member of the Democratic Party, have been fighting for. So thank you for whoever asked that question. I think as a group, we should all, at the end of the day, write a letter, call the governor, and say, you have to sign HB 40 today. You're going to call it back to a special session. Go back to that special session. HB 40 should also be at the top of the list of things that need to get done.
Thank you. T.O. Hardeman.
Yes, I support pro-choice and marriage equality. Women's rights is like human rights, and human rights is the same as women's rights. We've come too far as time out for all this. That's a no-brainer. I support it 1,000%. And I want want you all to know that I'll be the champion that's going to champion the cause for everybody in the state of Illinois. I'm the real deal. I just want to put it like that. So when it comes to stand up for women, my track record is pretty solid in that arena. So I need your support and I need your votes. I know we wait to my closing statement, but my answer is yes and yes, okay? Thank you all.
Well, I think both of these are social justice questions, and the right to choose is the law of the land. It's been recognized as that, and I said that if I was governor, I would sign HB 40. I have, on more than one occasion, someone has asked me pointedly, are you pro-choice or pro-life? And I said I'm pro-life. I said that in the women's group, and I think everybody respects the right to life, but I think these issues are misconstrued, okay? But I don't want us to go back to the 1970s. We don't want to have another Roe versus Wade. And for that reason, we cannot go back on the social justice issue, nor do I think we can go back on the social justice issue of marriage equality. Okay? This became law of the land. It's something we need to uphold. It's something we need to respect. And I would respect that as being your next governor. Thank you very much.
The first speech I made on the Senate floor was in support of marriage equality. It remains one of my proudest moments in the Senate. I fought hard to pass that bill. I was the lead sponsor of the bill making Illinois one of the first states in the country to ban so-called conversion therapy for minors. I'm 100% pro-choice. I'm proud to stand with Planned Parenthood personal background. I'm a proud chief co-sponsor of House Bill 40, and I'm sponsor of a number of pieces of legislation to expand women's reproductive freedom. I'm honored to be here with my friend Donna Miller, a strong supporter of my campaign, incoming chair of Planned Parenthood Illinois. I also want to say that I know my place on these issues. See, there's a men on this stage. It's freaking pathetic. It's a problem. And so, as passionately as I feel about these issues, as much as I care about these issues, I want the communities who we are fighting for to know that they are the leaders and I am an ally, that they are leading the fight and I'm doing everything I can to support them in these efforts. We have seen an incredible resistance movement growing across the state. That is a movement led by women in every corner of the state of Illinois. They are changing the state. They are changing the country. They are saving their nation. And I am here to say thank you. I stand with you. I support you. And I acknowledge that you are the leaders who the rest of us have to stand in strong support of.
Like all my colleagues up here, and like Mr. Hardman said, women's rights are human rights. You can't take those two things apart. So when we talk about marriage equality or HB 40, of course I support that. I'm a little ashamed as an elected official that we continue to have these same conversations over and over again, especially after November. What's shameful, in my mind, is that the line I have to keep repeating at forums and at town halls and with my constituents is that I'm sorry we have to protect our friends and family and our neighbors from our federal government. The good news is that the resistance led by women is forcing a stop to the atrocity of Trump care. That people around the country are organizing, calling their senators on both sides of the aisle. People are organizing on HB 40, trying to get the governor to take a stand. It's led by women. It's incredible. That's what gives me hope. Is because I start seeing people organizing and coming together to protect one another from our federal government and our president and now our governor.
Thank you. Of course I'm pro-choice and I'm pro-marriage equality, but I think the question is more, were you doing it when it was hard? Back when it was hard to do, when it was a protest movement. Right? Marriage equality is popular now. What were you doing before when it wasn't popular? And so I've been engaged in the LGBTQ fight for most of my life. In fact, my mother was a social justice advocate on behalf of LGBTQ rights. And so I grew up in an environment where this was just natural. In fact, I didn't imagine there were communities when I was a kid, that there were communities around the country that didn't think those rights were equal rights. So it's no mistake that in 1995 I hosted a wedding illegally, I guess, in my backyard for two men. two close friends of ours, that I have been marching with the Gay Pride Parade before it was just a celebration, when it was a real protest march with the Illinois Federation for Human Rights before it was called Equality Illinois, and was marching in Washington on behalf of Choice back in the early 90s, and continued to march not just at the Women's March in January, the Women's March in April, but I continue today to be a loud voice on behalf of women and women's health.
And I have a pile more questions, but we have come to the end of our question period. It is time for closing statements, and the last shall be first and the first shall be last, which means that now we are starting with J.B. Pritzker.
Let's see if I can throw
2 minutes.
this. Don't start my time. Okay. So thank you very much. Thanks again to all of you for spending the morning with all of us. I think, look, we have some terrific candidates, and as you've heard, many of us agree basically on the fundamental issue. So I think the question that you've got to ask yourself is, what were you doing when you weren't running for public office? When nobody was looking? What were you doing? Because I think that's the real demonstration of somebody's values, is what they were out fighting for when you weren't running for anything or trying to prove anything. And for my whole life, I've been standing up on these issues, making sure that we feed kids in schools, making sure that we're getting early childhood education and child care for black and brown kids, for low-income kids, for at-risk kids all across the United States. Standing up to make sure that we're fighting for civil rights and for human rights, and making sure that the LGBTQ community and women are treated equally and fairly. It's important, I think, to make that evaluation of everybody on this stage. And by the way, you should throw Bruce Rauner in. What was he doing? Because he wasn't doing anything, and he's proven it as governor, by the way. So remember, when you're making your decision, you got to look at the record, right? Were they really affecting people's lives? Were they thinking big and affecting tens of thousands of people's lives with the things that they were doing? I propose to you, I suggest to you that for my whole life I've been engaged in this fight of creating jobs, fighting for civil rights and human rights, of standing up for kids, particularly the most at-risk kids across the United States. Thank you very much.
I got into politics after Hurricane Katrina because I watched politicians and policymakers blame poor people for poverty. And I spent a lot of my time in graduate school looking at those connections between disaster and poverty. And the one thing I kept coming back to, so when I also met my wife at the University of Chicago, but the one thing we keep coming back to is that our policy is always based on deserving and undeserving. That we believe some people deserve more than others. And we need to break that narrative. And I'll tell you why. 30, 40 years ago, when industries and factories left black and brown communities, we saw what happened. Poverty went up, and we had a crack and cocaine epidemic. And what did we do? We broke up black and brown families. We sent men to jail. We didn't provide treatment. We didn't create jobs. We didn't follow investment. We sent people to jail, and we broke up families. And now that those same kinds of jobs are leaving white communities, and opiates and heroin issues are ticking up, now it's a public health issue. Yeah. And the truth is, it's always been so the path forward is recognizing the injustices of the past, but the injustice of the narrative of looking at some people as deserving and undeserving is our path forward. Because I'll tell you this much, as I've been traveling around the state, whether we're talking to poor white people, black people, or brown people, the issues are the same. They want good schools, they want good jobs, they want universal child care, and they don't want to stop being locked up for low-level drug offenses and stop being treated unfairly. This is what it's about. This is what government is about. That's why I'm running for governor, because I believe it's time to bring people together. Stop fighting over scraps. We're neighbors, we're Illinoisans, and we should act as such. Thank you.
Thank you for participating in this forum. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk with you. we talked about a lot of issues, and if you look at those issues through the lens of what state government has done in the way it interacts with the Southland, you come up with the same story every time, which is that we have a system that's working for somebody else. We have a system in state government that's not working for the rest of us. We have a tax system that overtaxes this region of the state, and it's not a coincidence. So we got a tax system that was written by a few wealthy people, for a few wealthy people, and the rest of us are left out in the cold. We have a school funding system that does not serve this part of the state fairly. That's not a coincidence. It was written for people who live in a certain part of the state and who benefit from it. We have tuition. We heard about tuition earlier. We have tuition in this state that benefits people who know that they'll be able to afford to put their kids wherever they want to, and don't really want to see so much competition from the rest of us. And we talked about reproductive freedom. We have legal access to reproductive health care across Illinois, but actual access varies depending upon where you live, depending upon your personal family wealth. And so it is time for us to build a government that works for the rest of us. And no one's going to do that for us. There's no hero who's going to do it for us. It's not about finding the billionaire. It's not about finding a particular person. It's not about relying on someone or something. It's about us coming together to build the political movement needed to demand the government work for the rest of us. If we can use this moment to accomplish that, there is no limit to what kind of opportunity we're going to have. There's no limit to what it's going to mean to go to a public school everywhere in the state of Illinois, not just in some places. There's no limit to the job opportunities that are going to exist everywhere in the state of Illinois, not just in some places. I'm running to build a movement to do that. I'm here to ask for your support. I'm here to ask you to join that movement. Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It was a great honor to be here, and I want to recognize my wife, Karen, who's with me, who's been campaigning with me for 26 years. We've been married 25, so that says a lot about her as well. I want to tell everybody in this room what I've been doing. Okay, for 28 years I was a public school teacher, and there's been a lot of talk about education. I was the guy that did bus duty. I was the guy that did cafeteria duty. I was the guy that took back trays and cleaned up after kids. I also taught tech ed. I was that career and technical teacher that taught kids skill sets so they could go out and get jobs. And I hope those about 4,000 kids that I taught are proud of the jobs that they have today. That's what I did. I served kids. I worked in school districts. I fought this issue of school funding. I worked for property tax increases. And at the same time, I was serving as a local elected official. And as a township supervisor, I paid general assistance to people who were having hard times. So those kids had running water and electricity. So when they went home at night, they could do their schoolwork and come back to school proud as to who they are. And what I do today as a regional superintendent, I see that every kid that's getting ready to go to school has a new pair of shoes because I issue McKinney-Vento funds to the homeless. Okay? I want kids to be proud when they go to school, and I want them to have what other kids have. That's why I'm running for governor, is because I understand that life. I understand that life of everyday people. You know, when you hear about politicians talk about draining the swamp, I drained the swamp. I drained the swamp to make a community better because it was a swamp that was infested. Okay? We have a swamp that's infested with bad politicians. Okay? We need to fix this thing. Okay? And I am the outsider. I am the guy that is removed. I'm the guy that doesn't have millions of dollars. Okay? So if you want to elect somebody to go to Springfield to be governor that understands everyday life, elect me. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. When you vote for T.O. Harding, it's just like voting for yourself, okay? Because I plan to be a pure champion for the working class and poor people. During my career, I hired over 300 ex-offenders when I was at the UIC School of Public Health. I have a plan that represents everybody in Illinois. Right now I have about 500 volunteers. And remember, back in 2014, T.O. Harding secured close to 30% of the state vote without a lot of money. We secured that number of votes for around $35,000. I'm the only candidate in this race that can make this happen without a whole lot of money. All I need is about maybe $500,000. We can win this primary hands down. Like J.D. Christmas, that's not a lot of money when you talk about billionaires. I'm going to make that clear. Like J.D. Christmas said, I'm going to take the higher road. But I'm the real deal in this race. I'm not running just because I'm black. I'm running because I'm qualified. I need your support statewide. We can do this. We can win. I have volunteers all the way down in Southern Illinois, Central Illinois, and right now a poll will be coming out next week because a lot of candidates, they finance their own polls to make them look good. I have a poll coming out next week that's going to show me an 18% of the state vote. I need everybody to help me turn my campaign into a movement for the poor and working class people of Illinois, and you need a governor in that governor's mansion downstate that's going to have your back for real. If we get past our isms and schisms of why we shouldn't vote for T.O., we can win this race. I can defeat Bruce Rauner. I can defeat Bruce Rauner. Let me tell you why. Because when Bruce Rauner's wife, as he urged everybody to cross the aisle on Bruce Rauner, that's a sign of decline for Bruce Rauner in Illinois. We have a one-term governor in Bruce Rauner, and together we can make this official for everybody in the state of Illinois. I'm the only candidate up here with a 2020 plan, which represents a perfect vision for our people. Give me a chance. All I need is about 300,000 votes in Illinois, and I can win this primary hands down. I don't care who else is running. Nobody can out-hustle me in this state. I'm talking about in the business way. Hear me clearly. I'm talking about in the business way. I've traveled this entire state myself. I've shaken hands with over 300,000 people. I've visited every Walmart in the state, every Target. I live in the south suburbs now. I'm a resident of Calumet City, and I'm your brother, your leader, and your governor. I want to thank you all for listening.
I'm going to try and follow that up. Thank you so much for taking the time to be invested in what is a really important election. Actions, not words, is something that we really have to take a look at in this election. And we have to remember that facts do matter. I came from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Chicago, where I was working on public corruption cases, and I sat across tables from people who were corrupt, and they weren't the corrupt governors, they were people in lower levels of government. And I would say, why are you here? Why are you here? And they said, you know why? Because if I didn't cheat, someone else would, or I would lose my job, and that person would get ahead of me. And you know what, Scott? If you were me, you would do it too. And I said, that's wrong. So I rolled up my sleeves and I left that job at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I ran for office. And people said, you are going into a swamp and you're going to smell it. And I am so proud that after 5 years in the General Assembly, I have been down there, and the taint is not on me. Why? Because I've stood up when I see things wrong. We keep talking about Governor Rauner. We keep talking about Governor Rauner. All right, well, Governor Rauner wasn't there 3 years ago. 4 years ago, we had Governor Quinn. And was the Southland doing so great? Was the Southland doing so? Were the Democrats there for you? It doesn't make someone a bad Democrat to say, look, there are problems. The reason Governor Rauner is there is because we didn't do our job as Democrats. I know the right answers to all the questions today. I could have hit it out of the ballpark on every question if I wanted to say what you wanted to hear. If I wanted to say everything's perfect, it's all Bruce Rauner's fault. If I wanted to ignore my record of voting, if I wanted to say, if I thought you were all pro-Madigan, I'd just hide the fact that I didn't vote for him. That is not how we are going to win. That is not leadership. What Illinois is lacking, why Illinois sucks so bad right now, is because it doesn't have a leader. It doesn't have a leader. And just saying what you want to hear is not leadership. It's looking at people's track records. Criminal justice reform. JB was talking about how he endowed the Center on Wrongful Convictions. The first legislation I passed was to stop wrongful convictions, but I didn't see anyone down there working with us. You have to look at who's been in the trenches and who takes on issues and doesn't just talk about those issues. If Illinois is going to move forward and we have a bright future, we need to look past the words and look at the actions, and we need to elect the leader. My name is Scott Drury, and I'm running for government because I know there can be a better Illinois for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today. You know, this state is more divided than it's ever been. I stopped calling Governor Bruce Rauner because he doesn't deserve the title governor. Okay. I call him Bruce Rauner now because he's a person that's divided us, a person that has said, you know what, the people at the top, they're going to be better off than the people at the bottom, that hasn't invested in anything in this state except his venture capitalist needs. You know, people will ask me all the time, Alex, why do you think we didn't have a budget for so long? It's because he used that to divide us, to say, you know what, no matter what this is going to be, no matter what this governor race will be, it'll be Bruce Rauner versus Mike Madigan, them against us. We could fight that. We know better than that. We are one. I will fight for equality in this state. Not only economic equality, social equality, so that everyone has a chance. That's what they deserve. Everyone should have a chance to succeed in this country, in this state, and we do not do that enough today. We need to also make sure that people that want to live in the state can afford to live in the state, and the fact that, you know what, I pay high property taxes, everyone pays high property taxes, and you know why that is? Because we do not have a fair tax system. The rich don't pay their fair share, and the poor get stuck with all the taxes, all the property taxes, the sales taxes, the bag taxes, and guess what? Where those taxes go? They don't go anywhere except to fix problems that were done 30, 40 years ago. My generation is going to inherit the Edgar ramp. It's going to inherit the pension problem, and yet we just say, oh, okay. Democrats too long have not done the right things. As Democrats, we should have had a progressive income tax system. We should have fought for fair school funding. We should have fought for a higher education system. We have not done that. I am running for governor because I am a man of actions, not a man of words. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to please give another round of applause to all of our who have been scurrying around would like to get some pictures. So hang around because I think they would like to get some pictures of you guys together. I do want to thank the Democratic women of the South Suburbs for the all the work and commitment putting this together. Our vote is very important. All the people in the South Suburbs of Chicago. Great gesture.